The jazz trio played softly in the background as I smoothed the fabric of my forest green midi dress, elegant but understated, for my cousin Rachel's vineyard wedding. Nothing that screamed for attention. That had always been my style. Stay out of the spotlight, let others claim it, and focus on the work. My father, Daniel Whitaker, stood by the rustic bar, impeccably dressed in his tailored linen suit, surrounded by his usual circle of business partners. At 61, he still commanded a room like he owned it, because usually he did. He was the president of Whitaker Timber Holdings, one of Oregon's largest private forestry companies. His legacy was one of hardline capitalism, generational wealth, and exacting expectations. I lingered near the edge of the reception tent, watching him recount, no doubt for the 5th time this week, the firm's new expansion deal. My mother, Lenora, hovered at his side, her diamond earrings catching the evening light as she surveyed the crowd with polite detachment. My older brother Grant approached, swirling his whiskey like a man born for the boardroom. At 37, Grant was the crown jewel of the family. Stanford MBA, managing partner at a private equity firm in San Francisco, and recently married to a senator's daughter. Nora, he said, using the name he knew I'd long abandoned. Didn't expect to see you. Thought you'd be buried in that lab of yours. I offered a cool smile and sipped my sparkling water. Rachel's wedding isn't something I'd miss. His wife Elise joined us with a theatrical flick of her silk scarf. Grant says you're doing something with computers, she asked. Sounds niche. Is it even monetizable? Before I could respond, my sister Brooke arrived, radiant in designer heels. At 34, she was the family's pride, a high-powered litigator with twins and a surgeon husband. We're talking about Nora's coding thing? Brooke asked, amusement flickering across her face. Mom said you're still renting that loft downtown. You're really not done with that phase yet? I'd heard it all before, ever since I walked away from the law school admission Dad arranged for me, since I chose my PhD in quantum information theory over a predictable corporate future. What they didn't know was that my coding thing had just secured a $68 million 0-cents grant from DARPA and had quietly redefined the limits of quantum encryption. What they didn't know was that just 3 months ago, I had been featured on the cover of Forbes as one of the top 25 innovators under 35 transforming quantum security. What they didn't know was that my company, Novacar Systems, had just received a $3,100 million 0-cents acquisition offer from Apple. But I'd learned the hard way that showing my cards too early only led to questions, lectures, and pressure to abandon my path for there. I'm doing well, I said, keeping it short. Living off grant funding in a rented loft isn't really thriving, Nora, Grant scoffed, raising his brow. It's Nora, I said again, calmly. He never used it correctly. Before I could respond further, we heard my father's booming voice cutting through the vineyard air. He approached, a firm hand on the shoulder of a sharply dressed man I instantly recognized. Martin LeClaire, CEO of Redwood Holdings, one of the most influential clean tech moguls in the Pacific Northwest, and my dad's most prized business contact. Martin, Dad said smoothly. This is my youngest, Nora. She dabbles in some kind of tech project. He gave a short, forced laugh. My disappointing daughter, he added. The words stung, as always. I smiled politely, offering a handshake. Pleasure to meet you, Mr. LeClaire. Martin took my hand, his expression shifting to curiosity. He studied my face closely, then pulled out his phone, scrolling quickly through what looked like a digital magazine. Wait, he said, his voice rising with recognition. Aren't you? This month's Forbes. The quantum encryption breakthrough. The color drained from my father's face as Martin turned his phone to him. My photo was on the screen. Professional portrait, crisp navy blazer, quantum schematics behind me. The headline read, Dr. Nora Whitaker, 33-year-old CEO of Novacore, cracking the code of quantum security. Silence fell instantly. Grant's glass paused mid-air. Brooke's lips parted slightly. Elise's hand tensed on her purse. My father's mouth opened, then shut. That's not possible. Martin read aloud, eyes wide. the architect of the quantum mesh protocol considered the most critical encryption breakthrough of the decade. He looked at me, visibly impressed. You're the one who solved the zero-loss transmission issue? I nodded. Among other things. Martin turned back to Dad, whose expression had gone ghostly pale. Daniel, Martin said sharply, do you have any idea what your daughter has accomplished? Her work is going to revolutionize everything, from drug discovery to financial modeling to AI. Every major tech firm on the planet is scrambling to license her technology. Grant found his voice first. Nora, you never mentioned any of this. About being successful? I asked gently. You never asked, you just assumed. Brooke stepped forward, her attorney instincts flaring. That Forbes article, when did it come out? 3 weeks ago, Martin answered, glancing at me before continuing. The same week, Apple confirmed a $3.1 billion 0 cents acquisition bid for Novacore Systems. He scrawled, here it is. Elise gave a soft gasp. My father's face had shifted from pale to ashen. But you live in that tiny loft, my mother said, suddenly appearing at his elbow. She must have heard the growing crowd. You drive that old Honda. I live modestly by choice, I replied, calm and steady. The apartment is actually a penthouse, downtown, overlooking the Willamette, and the Honda runs fine. I don't measure my worth in square footage or engine size. Martin was still reading. Listen to this, he said. Dr. Whitaker's revolutionary encryption work was conducted in near-tonal secrecy, a deliberate move to let the science speak louder than self-promotion. Despite offers from every major tech corporation, she retained full ownership and control over the application of her discoveries. He looked up at my father with something between disbelief and reverence. Daniel, your daughter is one of the most significant scientific minds of our time. This tech could tackle climate modeling, reinvent medical diagnostics, reshape global infrastructure. He paused, then added, and you introduced her as your disappointment? The silence pressed in from every direction. Guests nearby had begun to tune in. Across the vineyard lawn, I saw Rachel in her wedding dress, watching with wide eyes. Dad opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. We didn't know, because you never asked. I said softly. 8 years ago, you decided that because I didn't take the path you carved, I was a failure. You never once considered that I might be building something bigger. Grant's hand trembled slightly as he lowered his glass. The consulting gig, he murmured. You turned it down for this? I turned it down, I said, because I had work that mattered, and I needed the space to do it, without being boxed in by your expectations. Brooke was doing silent math behind her polished expression. The acquisition, $3 billion, $100 million, 0 cents. What's your stake, Nora? I gave her a measured smile. I retained 73% ownership when I took on investors 2 years ago. That values my share at just over $2.26 billion, 0 cents. The number hit them like a wave. Elise actually reached for Grant's arm for balance. He sat down heavily on the edge of a nearby wine barrel. My father stared. Like he'd misheard. $2 billion, he whispered. On paper, yes, I replied. But the money was never the point. The goal was solving real problems, advancing secure communications, pushing the limits of what's possible in tech, creating tools that help people. Martin Leclerc studied my father with a narrowed gaze, then asked, Daniel, how does it feel to know your disappointing daughter is now one of the youngest billionaires in North America? The question cut with intention. I watched my father not just grappling with the revelation of my success, but with the consequences. Martin wasn't just a guest. He was a key investor in Dad's professional circle. And now, he'd witnessed my father publicly dismiss someone more accomplished than almost anyone at this wedding. I'm proud, Dad said at last. But the word rang hollow. Are you? I asked quietly. Because just this afternoon, you told Aunt Marlene you wished I'd at least found a husband by now, since I clearly wasn't gonna support myself. His face drained of color. Brooke looked mortified. Grant stared at me like he didn't recognize the person in front of him. Nora, he muttered, dazed. My mother stepped in, voice smoothing into her practiced tone for social emergencies. We've always been proud of you, sweetheart. We just didn't understand. You didn't understand, I said calmly, because you never tried. Every time I talked about my research, you either changed the topic or told me I was wasting my potential. Every holiday turned into a lecture about how I was disappointing the family. Martin was still watching, intrigued. Dr. Whitaker, if I may, what's next for you? I nodded. I'll be leading Microsoft's new quantum research initiative and launching a foundation to fund underrepresented scientists. Remarkable, Martin said. Then he turned back to my father. Daniel, you do realize your daughter is going to change the world? Just then, the wedding coordinator called for the cake cutting. If stories like this make you pause, reflect, or feel seen, don't miss what comes next. Tap subscribe and follow along as the truth unfolds in ways no one at that vineyard ever expected. As the guests began drifting toward the main reception tent for the cake cutting, Martin LeClaire lingered beside me. Dr. Whitaker, he said, I'd love to explore potential collaborations between NovaCore and Redwood Holdings. We're actively integrating quantum-ready systems into our next-gen infrastructure projects. I'd be happy to discuss that, I replied. Though, after the acquisition closes, you'll want to coordinate with Microsoft's quantum research division. Of course, he said, slipping a card into my hand. Here's my direct line. Then he turned to my father. Danielle, I'll expect a detailed briefing on this at our next board meeting. I want to understand exactly how Redwood can align itself with these advances. With a polite nod, he walked off, leaving behind a stunned silence in our small family circle. The reception buzzed around us, but we remained still, like time had slowed in our corner of the vineyard. Grant finally spoke. Nora, why didn't you tell us? Would you have believed me? I asked softly. Or would you have rolled your eyes again, like when I mentioned quantum entanglement at Thanksgiving, and Dad told me to stop trying to sound smarter than everyone else? Brooke, always scanning for angles, spoke next. Have you addressed the tax structure on this acquisition? It's a big number. Elmo smiled. I have legal teams from 3 firms covering everything. Patents, M&A strategy, international compliance. It's handled. But family should help, Mom said weakly. Family should support, I corrected. There's a difference. You tried to help by fixing me when I didn't fit your mold. What I needed was trust. Dad finally stepped forward, his voice softer than I remembered. Nora, we were wrong. I was wrong. Can we start over? I looked at him for a long moment. For once, I saw humility, not disappointment. Come on, I said. We're going to put the Dad, I never wanted to shut you out. I just needed space to build something real, even if it didn't look like success to you. You let us believe you were struggling. I let you show me what mattered to you most. If you were only proud after the money came, what does that say? The words sank in. My mother looked pale. Grant was still reeling. So what now? Brooke asked. Now, I said, glancing at Rachel across the lawn, we celebrate her day. Tomorrow I meet with Microsoft to finalize the future. And if you want to see what happens after the vineyard, subscribe and follow the story as it unfolds beyond the boardroom. Next week, I'm giving a keynote at Stanford on advancements in quantum error correction, I said. And next month, I'm testifying before a congressional committee about the national security implications of quantum computing. I paused, making eye contact with each of them. You're welcome to be part of that life, I said, but only if you can accept that my definition of success might not look like yours. From across the vineyard tent, I heard Martin LeClaire's voice carrying as he addressed a group of industry leaders. Words floated through the air, revolutionary protocols, brilliant scientist, her father must be proud. Dad heard it too. His shoulders straightened slightly. When he looked at me for the first time in years, the disappointment was gone, replaced by something quieter, maybe even respect. I want to understand, he said, your work, your research, what you've built. Then ask me questions, I replied. Real ones, not disguised criticisms. Grant cleared his throat. So, quantum error correction. Is there a version of that explanation that works for a finance guy? And just like that, for the first time in 8 years, my brother was asking not to undermine, but to learn. It was a start. As we walked toward the main tent, Mom slipped her arm gently through mine. "Nora," she said, "are you happy? Really happy?" I considered the question seriously. "Yes, Mom," I said. "I'm doing exactly what I was meant to do." "Then I'm proud of you," she said softly, and for once it sounded like the truth. The rest of the night passed in a blur of long overdue congratulations, sudden interest from relatives who had overlooked me for years, and business cards from Dad's colleagues now eager to schedule meetings. But the moment I'll remember most came during a slower song, when Dad pulled me aside beneath the hanging vineyard lights. "I owe you an apology," he said. "Not just for tonight, for the years I didn't see you, didn't listen." "I know," I said gently. He hesitated. How do I make it right? I thought of all the dinners where I'd been asked when I'd get a real job, all the blank stares when I'd tried to explain my work, all the quiet nights wondering if I'd made a mistake in choosing purpose over approval. "Start by believing in me," I said, "especially when you don't understand what I'm doing." He nodded slowly. "Deal." As the guests began to say their goodbyes, Martin Leclerc approached one last time. "Dr. Whitaker," he said, "I meant what I said earlier. This might be the most memorable wedding I've ever attended." He glanced toward Dad. "Your father is a lucky man, whether he realizes it or not." "Thank you, Mr. Leclerc." "One more thing," he added, lowering his voice. "Meridian is always looking to stay ahead of the curve. I'd like to schedule a formal conversation about a partnership." I smiled. "My assistant will reach out next week." As he walked away, Dad came to stand beside me. "That was Martin Leclerc," he said, awestruck. "Talking about partnering with my daughter's company." "Yes," I said quietly. "I think I've seriously underestimated you." "Just beginning to realize that," I teased. He laughed, a sound I hadn't heard aimed at me in years. Fair point. The car ride home was quiet, but for the first time, it wasn't heavy. It was full of something unfamiliar between us. Possibility. As we drove, my phone buzzed. "Grant, lunch this week? I actually want to hear more, really hear it." Then one from Brooke. "Looked up your Forbes article. Had no idea quantum computing might impact legal data indexing. Want to talk soon?" And finally, "Mom, I'm sorry it took so long to see you. Truly see you. Love, Mom." I looked out the window as the city lights shimmered across the Willamette River. Tomorrow I'd return to my penthouse and continue the work that had defined my life. But now, for the first time in years, I wouldn't be doing it in isolation. Dismissed, doubted, diminished by those meant to support me. Sometimes, the greatest vindication isn't proving them wrong, it's giving them the chance to grow with you. The Forbes cover was only the beginning. The real revolution was unfolding in those fragile, powerful moments of understanding. One honest question at a time. One unexpected ally at a time. One rewritten family legacy at a time. And finally, they were ready to meet the woman I'd always been. And I was ready to let them. If you've ever been underestimated by the people who should have lifted you up, I'd love to hear your story. Drop a comment. Tell me what moment hit home. Tell me what you would have said if someone finally listened. And if my journey resonated with you, subscribe. Not just for me, but for every quiet fighter out there proving that worth isn't measured by approval. It's measured by the courage to keep going.